afternoon. This is Connecting the Dots with Deanne. And today I'm bringing you into my little new studio, also known as my guest room. I've got some of my favorite pictures and items behind me, and you may even see a little wiener dog helping me record. So today I'm going to share with you some headlines and just some things I was talking to some of my friends about, and hopefully you'll find it informative. So I'm going to try to share this here. So my topic today is, do numbers tell a story? I think sometimes when we don't have all the information, it's hard to know like how to form an opinion. So I'm going to just share a couple things with you. So if I get the screen to advance, there we go. It went too far. Okay, here we go. So yes, there's a quote about conspiracy theorists, otherwise known as people capable of pattern recognition. And I think that's what I do when I connect the dots, is I recognize patterns and trends. And according to this person here, McKenzie, pattern recognition, according to IQ test designers, is a key determinant of a person's potential to think logically, verbally, numerically, and spatially. I always joke with people and tell people I'm spatial because I can figure out how to get like so many items in a tiny type space, and I'm usually correct about it. And this actually came from Psychology Today, but the key there is numerically. So there's some numbers. So a friend and I, we were having a conversation about this gentleman, Damar Hamlin, and obviously we know he's from the very close area to where I live. I live just outside of Pittsburgh, and he's from McKees Rocks, Pennsylvania, which is also like a suburb of Pittsburgh. We know that he had some cardiac arrest on the field, that he's doing better. And then CNN just reported about a week ago that there's a doctor reporting it may be due to something that he had, the little. So it's kind of interesting. And my friend said, "Oh, I've worked in the medical field. That stuff happens, because I said, "Do you think it could be from the?" And he said, "Oh, no, that stuff happens." But when you look at the numbers, I've seen a lot more videos online, like on YouTube and different places, of people actually having problems. I mean, there was a young 18-year-old MMA fighter that just, had a problem and died. There's videos of soccer players in Europe and, across the globe having problems. And then I found this article. So from January 2021. So what was pretty big about then was that we had just had that thing out, the little jabber doer. And to present, we've actually had this happen 1,100 times. I think even one time is too many, but maybe some of them would have had it anyhow. We don't know that, but it's too many. And just to get some perspective, it took from 1966 to 2004 to have that happen, to get to 1,100. So especially those under the age of 35. So this is not something that's normal. And I think when you look at the numbers, could be a trend. And you got to ask yourself, is something going on with this? And then we have, I heard this, it was a bit upsetting. I heard that a lot of the elites are looking for pilots who haven't had them. Okay. And then we have somebody saying that the FAA quietly admitted that EKG of those people flying the planes is no longer normal. So this is a concern for me. And I'm sure the elites know this, but I feel like they might be behind it. Now, some of you know I spent some time in nursing school. There's various reasons. Mainly, I had to help a family member, and I didn't get to complete. But one of the things that we learned is there's steps to a vaccine becoming approved, and typically it's going to take years. Some people even say 7 years being about the average. But there's steps. The first step is where they use it on animals to see if they survive. And if you want to look into this, step number one didn't go too well with some of the more recent that we've had. And then they next move to regular people. It's usually males. That's what they told us in nursing school. And then eventually, if that goes well, they test it on people who actually have the disease. So, and then from there, they're going to look, it's going to take months, if not years, to get actual approval. And then they still stay in a pharmacovigilance stage after that, where the watchdogs are supposed to be detecting, assessing, monitoring, and looking for any kind of adverse effects. So if you look into some things, like some of the people who were reporting things to us are very closely related to the watchdog organizations. Like in some cases, they might have a spouse, or they left the FDA and then became president of Pfizer. So it's kind of interesting, and I'm a little bit concerned that some of this slipped away from us, and that they used possibly emergency measures as an excuse to do this. But I'm very worried about the safety and the efficacy of this. This is kind of funny. Did you get it? I like it. Okay, so then that kind of led us into talking about just these kind of things in general. And the same kind of thing happened in our conversation. He was saying, well, we all got this. I don't think this is a big deal. I mean, some people think that their children might have gotten autism from these. I happen to know a very, very good friend from when I lived in Arizona, and her daughter was about three and a half. And my friend actually is a sign language interpreter. So she and her daughter could speak perfectly well. They could sign language and communicate. And she got a series of these, which was kind of normal for her age. And we all happened to go to a conference. Her mom watched the baby while we were gone. By the time we came back, there was visible and notable changes. And later on, she was diagnosed with autism. And I always felt in my heart of hearts that it had something to do with this. Am I able to prove that? No. But I was, in talking with my friend, he said, oh, lots of people had those. We had them when we grew up. But then, he grew up prior to 1962, and he probably just had the first three. I graduated in 1983, so I probably had more than the three, but I don't think I had quite as many as these. But we didn't see that many people that had autism, when we were growing up. There just weren't that many. And then all of a sudden, there seems to be just like an explosion of it. Like I know so many people who have a child or a member of their family that has it. And then you look at how many of these they're now expected to take. And I think it's too much. If I had a child school age and I didn't want to have to show shot records, I'd probably be homeschooling for a lot of reasons. But I wouldn't want to risk it. Some of these things, debatable whether if it's even a big deal. So many of us survived without these. I kind of feel like somebody's got an agenda. And there's also things that slip past us, like they made laws saying that you can't sue them for this. And so if you have an injury from something like this, you can't sue them for it. How convenient. So that's also a concern for me. But I think when you look at the numbers, yeah, maybe you could take some of the influenza ones out, but there's a lot. And then some of these things, it's amazing that they want you to keep having them and keep having them and keep having them. For example, when I was a school teacher, I had to have measles, mumps, and rubella, MMR, they call it. Well, then I didn't teach I taught school for about 13 years, had a large gap where I did, I was an insurance agent. And then when I went to nursing school and I was going to be going into hospitals, well, they wanted to know if I had it. So there's a test you can do, blood test, and they check for what's called titers. So they want to see, do you still have essentially antibodies in your blood? And I did. I had almost all of it. I think I needed a rubella because I'm not sure when I first started teaching it if we just had or if there was rubella in there. I think later on in my career we had MMR, so that might be why I didn't have as much of it. But I don't even think parents are testing their children to see if they still have these in them. And then there's other things out there. I know different things have patents on them. What's interesting is some people say that the thing that we had during the CV-19 thing, that the patents for the drugs came out like in 2017 and 2018. So that's a bit startling to me. And then I do start to think that there's something going on. And sometimes I find little clippings like this one's from Kissinger. If you remember him, I mean, he was very politically involved, but it does seem to look like there's something going on when you read an article like this. So I'll just kind of leave you to this. But I am concerned that they've kind of been telling us it's mandatory and telling us it's mandatory, but there's really not laws on the books. If you wanted to have your children homeschool, you don't have to. But it does look like they're aiming for other objectives, and this is just the warm up. I think it's more than coincidence. And then I think this is kind of a cute quote too. Here's another thing that got me very upset. My some of you will know during the past couple years that I lost my mom due to this disease. And then later on, they published, how much money each state got. And I said, I live outside of Pittsburgh. I live in West Virginia. And when I look at this chart, they got the most. So it's really upsetting to me that happened too. And then there was some other things that maybe could have helped it or prevented it. And a lot of people seem to, in the public, let's say the mainstream media, seem to lash out at them. But the actuality is some of these things may have worked, but people were put down. And I think now we're finding this out. Okay, and then we've got some other headlines I just wanted to share with you. And I think this mixes in too. Like there seems to be too much divide, and I want to get over that divide. I don't necessarily think that we need bare breasts at all, and certainly not just for one group. And some might argue it wouldn't be this group; they would rather see another group. Probably the male species of the species would, but we just don't. I don't think we need it at all. I'd rather see that we didn't. And then this was another thought, of course, the Constitution. It's a little bit of a thought here. And I feel like people need to go back and review it. I was listening to David Nino Rodriguez in one of his recent interviews, and there was a person he had on that frequently interviews people, and people don't know what's in the Constitution. Even those that might have been sworn to uphold it don't know. That's a common thing. So we need to know what's there, because this isn't something that gives us rights. You got to go back to read it. We have inalienable rights and a right to choose. And when you aren't knowledgeable about what your rights are, it's just as bad as not knowing the numbers. If you didn't know the numbers, how could you make an accurate decision on those other topics we discussed? But I think we need to look at this, and there are some people out there that seem to think this document is now a bad thing. And that pretty much concludes my topic. But you see where I'm coming from. If you know what the numbers are, then you can make a better decision. So I wish you all a happy Sunday. Love, light, and good vibes until we meet again.